If you can record, please. Jazakallah khairan. So, Bismillah wa alhamdulillah wa salawat wa salam ala Rasulullah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa min wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our beloved brothers and sisters, colleagues, seekers of knowledge from all over the world. It's such an honor to have you all with us. And thank you so much for joining us. We are doing these lectures twice a month internationally, but this month we're even more generous. We have done it 3 times this month. So alhamdulillah, shukrullah, that's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to disseminate knowledge through our excellent scholars and colleagues all over the world. And we're very honored to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's vessels and tools when it comes to disseminating sacred knowledge from the tradition of Islamic psychology. Alhamdulillah, shukrullah. I want to first and foremost thank my colleagues, Sister Fatima, one of the co-founders of ISIP, the International Students of Islamic Psychology, Sister Aya, for joining us from Canada today, helping out and facilitating. Sister Kauthar, also helping and facilitating from US. We're honored to have you with us to help us facilitate this. Your so valuable. Please mute yourself, brothers and sisters, when you join. Please mute yourself when you join. Jazakallah khairan. I also want to thank our beloved International Secretary of ISIP, Sister Ismat Fatima from India, for being the heart of ISIP, always doing so beautiful khidmah, serving the Ummah and all of our colleagues in the community. And to all of our other colleagues, if I forgot any names, please forgive me for any shortcomings as your brother. And when it comes to all of our members who join, brothers and sisters, it's an honor to have you all with us. Thank you for joining us and giving out of your precious time, brothers and sisters, from all over the world, and being part of the dissemination of sacred knowledge. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this commitment that we have to normalize Islamic psychology all over the world, to break the stigma when it comes to speaking about mental health issues amongst the ummah, and to facilitate processes where we can bring about a change of how we view health, and how we view health is holistic. Health is nothing isolated into one domain. Health is something holistic, and every health comes from who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the way that we try to address it. Today's session will be about solution-focused brief therapy from an Islamic lens, subhanAllah. So we're looking forward to listen to Professor Dr. Nazila Isgandarova from Toronto, Canada. MashaAllah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today's agenda, beloved brothers and sisters, we will start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, and then we will go through some welcoming and guidelines about, the whole aspect of our lecture series. After that, we will just give a certificate of appreciation to our Ustada, Professor Nazila, for tremendous work in the field of Islamic psychology. And then Sister Fatima will take over and introduce Professor Nazila, because this is actually her own teacher as well, mashallah. So it's very nice to meet the teacher of Sister Fatima, who's very knowledgeable herself, by the way, mashallah. So sometimes we as Muslims, we need to believe, brothers and sisters, in the chain of knowledge, the sanad, right? So now we're seeing a sanad from Professor to Ustada Fatima, and then you will take that knowledge, and then you will be part of that sanad and the dissemination of knowledge, which is a part of our tradition, by the way, brothers and sisters. So it's Sister Fatima will take over there. Then Ustada and Professor Nazila will do her lecture together with also Sister Sebdanur. Sister Sebdanur, welcome. She's a student, a professor, and also, mashallah, a knowledgeable sister in her means as well. So they will do this presentation, and she will be at the service for Professor. And then we will do Q&As. And finally, we will just do some closing dua. So this is the agenda for today. Just briefly about the Zoom etiquettes, dear brothers and sisters. This is nothing new. Of course, this is something that we try to remind ourselves every time we have sessions. Keep your Zoom and microphone muted at all time. Questions will be addressed through the Zoom chat. And in the end of the session, when we have the Q&A part, we will address the session to the lecturer, to Professor, inshallah. No recording or screenshots are allowed. We will share the recording in a couple of days through ISIP's YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, feel free to do so. There's a lot of great knowledge there that you can benefit from. And our beloved colleagues, Sister Aya, Sister Kauthar, or Sister Ismat, or Sister Fatima will share it in the Zoom chat, the link, and also other beneficial sources as well. Yes, if you need live transcriptions, please press the More button in the end of the Zoom application, and then you can access it, inshallah. All right, a little bit about ISIP's mission statement, dear brothers and sisters, and please forgive me for speaking too much. We try to be an inclusive space designed to connect people with diverse backgrounds interested in the field of Islamic psychology. As we mentioned, we have people from over 90 countries and nationalities, which is amazing. We have local and regional chapters in over 25 countries, which is amazing. And this is all a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal. So no matter which nationality or racial background, ethnicity, or professional background, you're more than welcome to join. You don't need to be a mental health professional. You don't need to be an alim or an alima. You don't need to be an academician. As long as you're interested, welcome to join. We aim to disseminate knowledge, share resources, and discuss best practices in a free and accessible manner. So everything that ISIP does is free of charge, so that no matter which social, economical background you have, you can benefit from the sacred knowledge of Islamic psychology. And we also want to be a platform to enable further developments of people's personal and professional interests, studies, and understanding of Islamic psychology within their communities and countries of origin. And why we are so focused on Islamic psychology is because we see that psychology is one of the essential tools in understanding ourselves, right? And how we can, through psychology, understand how we can come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and which diseases of the heart has made us not as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So essentially, the word health means whole from the English etymological background, like the understanding of what words come from. So we try to bring about that health to whole, which is the original meaning of health in English, right? And that's why Islamic psychology is a passion of ours, because we really believe that Islamic psychology brings you to the wholeness. What is wholeness? Is to be connected to the oneness of what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Tawheed. So ways to continue to participate in ISIP, dear beloved brothers and sisters. Subscribe to our ISIP YouTube channel. The link will be shared by my beloved colleagues. And there you find lectures in English, in Arabic, in Turkish, in Urdu, in Malayalam, in Spanish, and many different languages. Join one of our Islamic psychology WhatsApp groups. We will also share the links in the WhatsApp, in the Zoom chat. That's where we disseminate knowledge and share resources. Amazing space for sohbah and companionship, and to connect with others that are like-minded in their passion to normalize this field. Also, you can become a member of ISIP via our website at www.isip.foundation. And becoming a member is free of charge. And then you can get access to our digital library with over 1,000 resources, articles, etc., connected to the field of Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health. Also, if you're interested to join different task forces of ISIP, we have task forces for refugee mental health, crisis support group, Islamic psychology supervision group. We also have a research center that we're establishing, which is called the Al-Balkhi Institute of Islamic Psychological Studies and Research. Feel free to reach out to us. You can email us, and we will be more than happy to add you. Also, if you want to start a local and regional chapter in your country, and we don't have any local and regional chapter in your country, then we're more than honored to establish under your excellent leadership. Feel free to reach out to us to our email, contact@isip.foundation, inshallah. All right, Sister Fatima, now I'll give the microphone to you so you can present your excellent teacher, Ustada, and professor. From the tradition of sitting, Hadith Jibril, the Prophet ﷺ sat in front of Jibril ﷺ, and he was studying the deen, right? He was, they were disseminating the deen. So this is a tradition, and you've been sitting closely to Professor. So I want you to also take over and present our Ustad, inshallah. So, Fadal.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Fatima. Thank you, Brother Jamaluddin, for always inspiring and being the heart and soul of ISIP. It is my great honor today to introduce someone that I've benefited from personally, as alhamdulillah, Professor Dr. Nazila Isgandarova. Just last week, actually, we were together, and she conferred my degree. So it was actually her standing at the podium and conferring my degree. So I'm very honored.
Can I just interrupt 1 second, please? Sister Fatima just took her graduation, and we know that Sister Fatima is the heart, one of the big hearts of ISIP. So if you want to give her digital applause, we want to just say mabruk to. I know Sister Fatima doesn't like this stuff, but I wanted to say mabruk to you, Sister Fatima, for getting your education and your degree. Mashallah, may Allah grant you tawfiq. I know you have studied very hard in this beautiful program in Toronto. So please forgive me to interrupt, but I just wanted people to give you some love and appreciation. Barakallah feek.
Thank you so much. Barakallahu fikum. This is really from the fadl of Allah. and ISIP really grew out of my studies. So I have the two people who were instrumental in both of these with me. So it's really heartwarming. Thank you to everybody, and to my brother Jamaluddin, and to Professor Nazila. So yes, I have had the honor to be a part of the program, the master's program that Dr. Nazila is currently an assistant professor at. So there's much more as I'm also learning about Dr. Isgandarova that she does. And so we apologize if this isn't the full breadth of everything that you do, Dr. Nazila. Alhamdulillah wa shukrullah. So Dr. Nazila Isgandarova is an assistant professor, as I was mentioning, at the Emmanuel College at the University of Toronto. She's teaching in the program offering Islamic spiritual care and psychotherapy, and that's the Master's in Pastoral Studies at the University of Toronto. Dr. Nazila is a registered psychotherapist and a registered social worker. Dr. Isgandarova was the first Muslim female chaplain spiritual care provider in Canada. So we're sitting with the pioneers, mashallah. The first Muslim certified supervisor-educator at the Canadian Association for Spiritual Care, or CASC. Dr. Isgandarova is also, her background is Azerbaijani, so she also does speak, I believe, Turkish and Russian as well. And she's the founder of the Azerbaijani Women's Support Center and author of numerous publications on war, violence against women, rape as a weapon of war, new models of Islamic spiritual care and counseling. She has been awarded many awards and grants, and she is the recipient of the prestigious Forum for Theological Exploration Research Award for her study on domestic violence against Muslim women, from the Canadian Association for Spiritual Care Senior Research Award and the Society of Pastoral Counseling Research Award. And recently, she is also the recipient of the Order of Vaughan. Vaughan is another city in our Greater Toronto area, and that is where she lives, and actually where my family lives as well. So I also have the honor of being a part of the same city, and the city of Toronto. So this is, again, this is not just an Islamic organization or a university. This is actually the city recognizing her service to what she's bringing to our fabulous place that we live. So without any further ado, I would like to also present Brother Jamaluddin, if you can go to the next slide. Brother Jamaluddin, if you're able to go to the next slide. We also would like to honor you with a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the whole team, Sayyid Jamaluddin and myself, but the entire team here recognizes and appreciates you being here with us and your continuing excellence in the field of Islamic psychology. So barakallahu fikum, we will be emailing that to you as well. So we want to, alhamdulillah, before everyone leaves, please do continue to make dua for us and continue to join us, and please provide feedback on the form that we will be sharing today. And we do have an upcoming session, actually, as Jamaluddin was mentioning, this month in particular, we're offering more than just 2 lectures. We have another lecture coming with another, actually, Canadian, with Brother Faisal Malik. If you can go to the next slide, Brother Jamaluddin. So please save the date. That is Saturday, May 27th. It'll be at the same time that we are here today. The registration is actually open, so we can also provide that in today's chat. So you can have your early registration. You'll be the first because it just was made right now, actually. So our registration is open for next Saturday's session as well. So inshallah, with that, I'll start with the Fatiha, and then Dr. Nazila, we will be honored for you to start your lecture. So if everyone, inshallah, brings their intentions, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enrich and bless all of our teachers, and to grant us openings, and to increase us in beneficial knowledge and all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you, Sister Professor Nazila, if you would like to start.
Thank you so much. I really feel very humbled and honored to be with you, and Fatima, mashallah, and all founders of this organization. You do amazing work to train Muslim psychotherapists, counselors, spiritual care providers. It's not an easy job, but you volunteer your time, your energy, just to make sure that Islamic psychology and Islamic psychotherapy and spiritual care moves to the next level. We all know that Islamic psychotherapy is not a new field. However, incorporating the Western ideas and making it more eclectic and making it more appealing is kind of a new effort. We owe to Dr. Malik Badri. He passed away. May his soul be rest in peace. So he made a great contribution. But Islamic psychotherapy is a rich tradition. It comes from our rich Islamic tradition, coming from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today's focus is going to be on solution-focused brief therapy. It's a Western technique, but we will learn how to incorporate it in Islamic psychotherapy. So before we start, I would like also say some prayer that also comes from our tradition. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي شرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So I'll share my screen. And okay. So solution-focused brief therapy, what this is, and I will start with a case study first. So years ago, we had a client, his name, I kind of disguised his name. Nader is not his true name. He was in his 40s. He was a new immigrant to Canada. He was a father of 3 children and married. He had a big issue in terms of alcohol and also gambling. He has been diagnosed with gambling addiction. He was not aware of the problem. And we wanted to apply solution-focused brief therapy with Nadir because we believe the solution-focused brief therapy is one of the effective tools to treat gambling and alcoholic behaviors. We know that gambling is haram in Islam, and Nadir, our client, he also knew that it was haram, including alcohol. However, our client was ambivalent and also uncertain in terms of his attitude. He usually blamed others, including his wife, constantly saying that I'm not being heard or understood by my family, and usually he referred to his wife. He also all the time said that, do I belong to this space? So he was uncertain if he's supposed to receive treatment or how the treatment is going to help him and his family. He also mentions that I gamble with hope to win. I know how to do it. My gambling did not contribute to my family problems. And sometimes he also said that he gambles and he drinks alcohol because I want to relax with my friends. So there was a cycle of positive reinforcements when he gambled and when he drank alcohol, but it also followed with extreme negative consequences because due to his gambling and addiction behaviors, he ruined his relationship, his job has been affected, he wasn't able to raise his children, So there were lots of family problems and also individual problems in his life. So let's look at the definition of gambling. Gambling can take many forms. These types are really very common in Ontario, Canada. Casino games, bingo, tickets such as 649 lotteries, scratch and win tickets, Super 7, some racetracks on and off-site, stock market trading, internet gambling, sports betting, and we also recently, especially during COVID-19, we did see cryptocurrency kind of addiction related to cryptocurrencies. And many people declared huge financial loss as a result of cryptocurrency trading. There are also cultural specific games such as cockfights, mahjong, tile-based games that was developed in China during the Qing dynasty. So we see that there are common types of gambling, but at the same time, there are culturally specific games. And in my country, where I come from, we used to have cockfights, but not anymore. But in some parts of Europe, we see that there are some animal fights, dog fights, and people spend lots of time in betting in this sport, kind of recreational, that's how they label it, games. In Islamic tradition, we know that gambling is haram, but according to non-Islamic approach, gambling is a problem when it interferes with work, school, or other activities. So this comes from the impairment perspective, that a problem becomes a problem when it creates problem in other areas of life. That is work, school, daily life. The person is not able to take care of themselves. The person is not able to have a meaningful lifestyle. The second criterion in impairment perspective is that it leads to emotional or physical health problem. It causes financial problems and harms relationship. The social aspect of that, or social functioning of the person from the impairment perspective, is really very important as well. When we see the social functioning decreases and being harmed by certain behavior or by certain health and including mental and physical problem, then it becomes a serious problem that needs to be treated. Let's look at assessment of gambling and other issues, and how we assess and treat specific problems by using solution-focused group therapy. We know that in Ontario, we cannot diagnose based on DSM-5. In other countries, psychotherapists can diagnose, but unfortunately in Canada, we can assess. In Ontario, the definition of psychotherapy is assessment and treatment of serious mental health problems, and treating these problems by using approved, CRPO-approved psychotherapy modalities. So CRPO stands for College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, and it lists certain techniques that psychotherapists use to treat mental health problems and relationship problems as well. So solution-focused brief therapy is one of them. Nevertheless, we need to understand DSM-5, how DSM-5 kind of labels or helps us to understand mental health problems and addiction problems as well, behavior problems, because DSM, Diagnostic of Statistical Manual, provides a common language among the healthcare providers, including psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, and social workers, and so on. So DSM-4, the previous version of DSM-5, defines gambling as an impulse control disorder. And these disorders are initially driven by pleasure, arousal, and gratification. And there are 11 specified symptoms of gambling. So let's look at some of these according to DSM-5. So addicted people usually seek action or an aroused euphoric state more so than the money itself. So the goal is not only to get the money, to win the money, but the pleasure they get from this activity is problematic too. Because in psychotherapy, we believe that we can treat people when they have a good insight and good judgment. And but when the person has a more pleasure kind of state, it is very difficult to treat that behavior. But when the person has kind of negative state of emotions, including guilt and shame, then in terms of addiction, there's higher chance that it can be treated. So our client Nadir, so did go back to gambling after many financial losses, but he had a hope. He had a hope that he can chase his losses and recover his financial losses. So in that respect, his behavior was very persistent. And according to DSM-5, the persistence means that experiences continuous symptoms to meet diagnostic criteria for multiple years. And Nadir had multiple years of gambling. And Nadir also told lies because he wanted to conceal the extent of involvement with gambling. So he was not, even in therapy sessions, even with his wife, in the family, he wasn't telling truth about his involvement with gambling. His gambling also affected his relationship, job, education, and career opportunity in Canada. So Nadir was a Newton immigrant, and usually when immigrants, they come to Canada, they have high hope. In order to get a better job and to settle and adjust to Canadian life, one needs to go to educational programs or improve the kind of skills and knowledge in order to get better job. So Nadir lost all these chances by his gambling. So in terms of finances, so Nadir didn't get a good relationship with his manager. So of course, when you don't have good relationship with manager, and then you have lots of absences in the workplace, it does affect your income as well. So he didn't have great income. So he relied on his wife, and also he borrowed from his friends in order to sponsor his gambling behavior. So he didn't have money. So he did borrow money from other people to provide money to relieve desperate financial situations caused by gambling, according to DSM-5. So again, from clinical impairment perspective and distress perspective, according to DSM-5, at least 2 of 11 symptoms should be manifested in one's behavior in order to diagnose a person or assess a person or put some label, the diagnostic label on person's gambling behavior. So one of them is unpleasant feeling, psychological activation, and dysphoria. So a sense of uneasiness or dissatisfaction. So Nadir also had alcohol abuse. So alcohol abuse happens when someone uses alcohol that results in a failure to fulfill major role obligations. Recurrent alcohol use in situations in which it is physically dangerous. So at work, in family, continued alcohol use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems. So Nadir exhibited all these symptoms in his behavior. In the beginning, I told that we decided to use solution-focused brief therapy in Nadir's case. The reason to make this decision was that SFBT is very brief. It's not problem-oriented. It's more solution-oriented and future-oriented. And it is also competent with Islamic teachings, and we will talk about that. So this Shazer, the originator or founder of solution-focused brief therapy, says that brief therapy simply means that it's brief. And it means a brief therapy that takes a few sessions as possible, not even one more than is necessary. So there's a higher belief that even with one session, it is possible to treat the person. And the average length of treatment is 3 to 8 sessions. And according to some of the research studies, it promises many successful outcomes. So that was the reason to apply SFBT in Nadir's case. Nadir didn't have huge income. We needed some sponsors to sponsor his therapy sessions. In that respect, the brief session would benefit him financially as well, and he could get many successful outcomes by getting the SFPT. SFPT also provided for Nadir to be heard in a non-judgmental environment, because we know that if someone has gambling behavior and alcohol diagnosis, there's huge stigma and shame in our Muslim community that discourages many people to seek treatment. In mental health treatments, this is really very important to understand why not many people seek treatment. Not only people with addiction behavior, even Muslim women, when they are subject to violence, not all of them, they get the treatment because of shame and guilt. And in that respect, I would like to mention Balkhi. In 9th century, one of the grandfathers of Islamic psychotherapy, who also extensively talked about the stigma and the society's attitude towards mental health problem. Okay, Nadir also would benefit from a Muslim therapist, because as a new immigrant, he would build easy relationship and rapport with his therapist. And we know that what techniques we use, most important thing in psychotherapy is to establish good rapport with the client. When we have the good rapport, any treatment modalities can work. This is my kind of belief that trust and rapport are really very important two factors in relationship with the client. And listening and validating feelings regarding raising street children as an immigrant is also important, would be very important in Nadir's case. And the reason is that we know that when immigrants come to Canada, they have initially lots of problems. They need lots of validation and support. Canada as a country has really great support programs for immigrants and refugees. That also includes mental health support services that many immigrants and refugees would benefit. So psychotherapy is beneficial also in terms of listening and validating clients' feelings instead of having judgmental approach to mental health and addiction problems. So that was kind of context of our client and also implementation of SFPT with our client. But 3 questions I would like to highlight in order to understand the context a little bit better. So what is the spiritual care in this interaction about? So when you listen to the presentation and you already heard the story, another story, I would like you to think about this context and question. What do you think is a spiritual care in this interaction about? When is help unhelpful? What is a specific therapeutic relationship in Islamic spiritual care and psychotherapy? And what is the helping image of the Muslim spiritual caregiver? And I also would like to present a brief history of SFPT. We know that it was first described by Steve DeShazer and his wife, Insu Kim Burke, in the mid-1980s. So they were the key contributors. We have other key contributors, including Lipchick and Weiner Davis. It was first implemented at the Brief Family Therapy Center in Waukee, Wisconsin, where Steve DeShazer and his wife, Insu Kim Burke, worked. And in her book, Cultivating Wholeness, probably Fatima, you are aware of this book. We usually teach this book in our Introduction to Counseling course at Emmanuel College of University of Toronto. Cultivating Wholeness by Margaret Kornfeld is really an amazing book where she also extensively talks about the SFPT and the relationship to spirituality. She says we have been fortunate to find a brief counseling method that reflects these principles, the divine healing and our cooperation with changes in our lives. And we believe that, and this is what Margaret Kornfeld emphasizes, this leads us towards wholeness. SFPT has no theoretical approach. However, it it has benefited from many foundational principles of many ideas. One of them is systems theory, strengths perspective, communication theory, and crisis intervention. One of the biggest influence theory was constructivism. And we know that as a theory or as an approach, constructivism helped many psychotherapists, psychologists to found many helpful post-constructivist psychotherapy modalities. Underlying principles of constructivism is meaning making. And one of the very important statement is that humans are creators of their own narratives. Meaning making means that we humans, we like to make meaning, right? So if we don't find the meaning in our life, we become depressed, we are in despair, we become sad, and there's we don't see meaning to live. So that is why it's like in psychotherapy, it's very important to help the person, the client, to find meaning in their problems. However, in SFPT, we strongly believe that it's not the therapist, but the client himself is the creator of his or her own narrative. Okay? And also an idea about the brief therapy model had a very general influence on solution-focused practice. And so we see that many ideas influence SFPT. And one of the things is that in solution-brief therapy, assessment and goal setting and intervention can happen in one session, and it's a continuous effort. What are the basic assumptions and beliefs in SFPT? So first of all, the therapist is not the expert on the client is. For us, it's very important to notice some pre-session changes, because we believe that pre-session changes already happened before the client comes to the session. For this, client needs to be validated and appreciated, saying that thank you for coming. We understand that it took an effort to come to the first session. So acknowledging this effort is really very important in solution-focused brief therapy and in other therapy modalities as well. In SFPT, we believe that situations are constantly changing, even if they may appear static. Even we don't see any change, but we strongly believe that the change constantly happens in our lives. And there are always exceptions, always will be exceptions, and clients, they have the skills, strengths, and resources to help themselves. SFPT encourages to see the client more than the presenting problem. We don't need to know all about the problem to be the solution, because as we mentioned before, SFPT is not problem-oriented, but solution-oriented therapy modalities. And the question is that how we inspire the client. In Nadir's case, for example, what SFPT oriented spiritual care provider did in order to inspire Nadir. First of all, right and wrong, blame and fault don't make things better. We believe that a little change is better than no change. So that is why the client again needs to be acknowledged. Sometimes good enough is good enough. And everybody has a preferred future. And let's ask Nadir how he visioned his preferred future, because vision is really very important, and how we encourage the person to share and create their own vision or preferred future is really very important in SFPT. Language is really very important, and meaning is very important. However, we know that language and meaning are socially constructed, because individual's problem is not individual's problem. It is also the problem of the surrounding environment, right? So in that respect, what we do to improve the society, to improve the family relationship, workplace environment in order to support our clients. So in that respect, we know that our lives are socially constructed because it depends on our relationship with other people. So in that respect, Aristotle has a very famous saying that humans are social animals. It might kind of sound very offensive, but the underlying meaning is that we are who based on our relationship with other people. One of the assumptions and belief in SFPT is that the time spent outside therapy is more important than the time spent with the therapist. And recognizing what is right is more important than recognize what is wrong. And our role in Nadir's case was to identify and amplify change, listen to clues, because sometimes clients, they don't see these clues. It's us, by having using active listening skills, we can see these clues and present it to the client. Sometimes clients, they might not see the exceptions, but we are asking exception questions in order to help the client to see these exceptions in their lives. That is why we ask useful questions persistently, but gently. So gentle approach is really very important. Active listening for strengths is very important. We need to listen for past successes and future strategies. So past also, as a PT therapist is not interested what happened in the past in terms of the problem, but we are interested in past successes because we use them as a foundation to help the person to come up with future strategies. Therapist needs to collaborate with the client on their agenda and their ways forward and their preferred future. The most important thing is that we need to stick to the task. Okay, that's really very important. So overall, we see that SFPT is really very brief. Brief is not meant to be brief, but anyone who uses SFPT, they will understand, they will see that it just happens to be brief. And problems result from cycle of behavior that have been reinforced. So we need to see that and also present this insight to the client. So in Nadir's case, what was that? Occasional winnings in gambling. So we engaged Nadir in this conversation, helping him to see that occasional winnings in gambling reinforce his behavior in gambling. There's no right way to view any problem, right? So no distinction between assessment and intervention in SFPT. So the first session with Nadir already implemented SFPT interventions, for example, miracle question, exception question, and the scaling questions. So in Nadir, I would like you to reflect on 3 factors, okay? And it benefited Nadir, and these factors were, and in any therapy sessions are, first, the person's primary temporal orientation. Are they past oriented, present oriented, or future oriented? Do they seek change or not? The patient belief system about what constitutes a complete therapeutic experience is another important factor. With Nadir, we needed to ask 3 interrelated technical and heuristic questions, and these were really very helpful in Nadir's case. The first question was that, how is the patient stuck? What is the problem or pathology? We avoided to use the pathology language, right? What does the patient need to get unstuck? It's sometimes detected by identifying what the patient is doing differently at times when he or she is not stuck. So that's really very important in order to identify exceptions. And how can, as a therapist, facilitate or provide what is needed? So that was that a third question. We already mentioned that in SFPT, we know that the client knows the best. And Nader already knew that his gambling was a problem. He just needed a space to acknowledge it, and therapy provided that space. He also knew that his behavior reinforced his urge to stop. And he just needed a therapy session with non-judgmental manner to help him to reinforce his knowledge. And we believe that people want to change and have the resources to do it. And SFPT oriented spiritual care provider had this belief and wanted to reinforce this change. And three questions I asked, and like I reflected when we did therapy session with Nader. What are Nader's forgotten hopes, skills, and resources? Does the client feel not being stuck when he prays or goes to the mosque? Overall, what is the client doing when he or she is not stuck? So these questions I reflected and will also asked Nader to reflect on in the therapy session. So techniques in solution-focused brief therapy mainly are three. Okay, so one of them is exception questions. So we asked Nader, say that, yeah. So we asked Nader, so let's say that you wake up one day and you don't have the problems that you had in your life, you don't witness that problem in your life anymore. How would you know? And Nader responded to these questions that I would wake up without headache because of alcohol and problems. He had huge headache problem. I would wake up without headache. Salma does not complain that I sleep with my socks on. I would not be late to work, and my financial situation would be back to how it was before I began gambling. So this was his response. Okay. And we already said that power of language and selective attention to clues. And the second technique in SFPT is exceptions. Exceptions are the prototype of how to take care of the rest of the problem. And presence of something is easier than the absence of something. We also asked Nader scaling questions, saying that where you are at in your problem and in your goal, and he identified it. We said that from 0 to 10, where you are. 0 means that you are, it's 0 below, and 10 means a maximum. And he identified it between 4 and 3. And we said that what would help you to go to 10, and he identified his goals. And change is really very important. Again, change occurs outside the sessions. And how do we bring this to Nader's attention? For example, can going back to the mosque would help him? Do you think the mosque community would be helping him to sustain this change and reinforce this change? So in that respect, because in the session, he mentioned that the mosque wasn't supported because every time he wanted to go, there was stigma and shame. That is why changing that mosque atmosphere is really very important in order to help Nader. SFPT therapy believes that one small change can lead to larger changes. So let's say that if Nader goes back to the mosque, this will be a small change. If he helps his wife in household chores, that can be a small change. If he is actively involved in taking his kids to activities, not relying only on his wife, this can be a small change. So we identified all these with Nader. Okay. Okay, so let me skip this part. Okay, so this, I think that is very important to say. So we believe again that SFPT focuses on the solution, not on the problem. I like you to think about this presentation and this, think about the SFPT intervention in others' case? Do you think that solution building, solution-oriented approach helped them, or would you prefer more problem-oriented approach in others' case? But we believe that understanding what the solution is rather than what the causes of the problem are very, very important. But one important principle, as Insoo Kim and Miller mentioned in their article, is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you see that there's no problem in client's life, so don't focus on it. If it worked once, do it again. If you see that there was a small change, but the client did go back to the problem again, so we already know that temporarily that step worked, so we will implement it again. If it doesn't work, do something different. So that's really very important problem. I mean, even in our personal lives too, you know, like this is really very important statement or kind of approach that we can also use in our own life. If it worked once, it will work again. If it didn't work, do something different. Okay, so we know that solution-focused brief therapy is very collaborative. Client needs to take the step as well. Alone, a therapist cannot do miracles in the session. So that is why we always encourage and motivate the client to collaborate in the treatment. In terms of multiculturalism and diversity, we believe that, you know, SFPT can work with diverse multiple clients, not only in Western context, but it can also work in non-Western context. I strongly believe that Nadir, as a Muslim client, benefited from solution-focused brief therapy. And also, let's focus on constructivism, right? So we know that all major religious traditions, including Islam, focuses on meaning making. Our tradition helps us to make meaning in our life. It also encourages us to be creators of our own realities. There's a very strong statement in the Quran says that if God changes it, Allah changes the situation of people if they are willing to change their situation, and gives lots of examples from the Prophet's life and the previous generations, previous civilizations, just to bring this to our attention that if we want to change in our lives, we don't wait for a miracle, right? Just it should come only from Allah. But Allah also says that take an action. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also says that the first do some action and then do tawakkul, right? So this is really very important in our tradition too. So I'm going to end here, okay? Thank you for listening. I really appreciated your listening. It was a long presentation. And then Sevdanur is going to highlight limitations of solution-focused brief therapy as well.
Okay. Hello, everyone, again. My name is Sevdanur. I think we had many other people join to meeting as well. So I just want to introduce myself. I am working as a registered psychotherapist, qualifying in Nova Medical Services in Toronto, where the Dr. Nazila Isgandarova is the clinical director. And I'm just going to briefly mention about the limitations of solution-focused brief therapy. As Dr. Isgandarova mentioned, solution-focused brief therapy is also called solution-focused therapy, and it's developed by Steve Caesar and Insoo Kim in collaboration with their colleagues at Milky Family Therapy Center at the beginning of late 1970s. And as we discussed, it's a future-oriented, goal-directed, and it usually focused on solutions rather than the problems that brought clients to seek therapy. And solution-focused brief therapy is a short-term and evidence-based therapy approach, which also incorporates with positive psychology principles and practices, and which helps clients by constructing solutions rather than focusing on problems. in the most basic sense, solution-focused brief therapy is a hope-friendly, positive emotion eliciting, future-oriented vehicle for formulating, motivating, achieving, and sustaining desired behavioral change. So during the therapy, we counselors try to focus on clients' strengths in life rather than their problems. And these strengths include beliefs and their experiences and their spirituality. Since these strengths can be a part of solution, it's also possible to use them during therapy according to their beliefs in their lives. So due to the client's limited self-disclosure and the focus on solutions rather than problems, it is considered that this approach can be used by clients from different cultures. Most significant reasons include the fact that clients achieve during the therapy, therapist is not the expert in this specific therapy approach. So just a second. Yeah, as Dr. Isgandarova mentioned, this therapy method can be benefited by specifically Muslim clients, in particular due to its emphasis on solution focus and hope-oriented nature. So solution focus therapy is gain recognition for its different nature compared to other therapy approaches. And it has so many benefits and it's evidence-based, but also it's always important to critically evaluate all the therapy approaches. And I would like to start with mentioning about its first limitation, which is the quick, goal-oriented nature may sometimes not allow therapists the necessary time and emphasize with what people in their treatment are experiencing. It can sometimes look like we are not we're not showing empathy properly, but it's actually more like focusing on client, not just like we talking during the therapy. So we want our clients to share their experiences and then mention their strengths or like how they want to lead the therapy, not us. So sometimes it can be perceived by clients that we are not showing empathy enough. So this can be first one of the limitations of the solution-focused brief therapy. And another limitation can be a lack of attention to underlying issues, because solution-focused brief therapy mostly focused on solutions rather than problems. It can be look like we are not actually focusing on client's problem. So sometimes it can be perceived by clients that we are not focusing on what they're sharing with us. So Smith and John has conducted a qualitative study on 2022, where they examined the limitations of solution-focused therapy, and they found that the approach solution-focused nature may neglect the exploration of deep-rooted issues, which can hinder long-term sustainable change sometimes. Clients who have experienced specifically complex trauma or have a deep-seated psychological issues may require a more in-depth psychological approach that addresses underlying causes of their difficulties. Yeah, as here it mentions that usually solution-focused therapy is an evidence focused, and then it's proof that can be effective. But sometimes for some specific disorders, it can be we mental health professionals maybe needs to more focus on the background of the problem. So that's why it can be limited when when it comes to the problems like that. So another limitation that I would like to mention is the effectiveness with complex psychopathology. As I mentioned, social solution-focused therapy has shown effectiveness in treating a range of mental health issues, but its application may be limited when working with individuals with more complex psychopathology. And there is also here one study conducted by Brown and his colleagues, 2021, and they reviewed and worked on a meta-analysis to assess the efficacy of solution-focused therapy in treating complex psychopathology. The study found that while solution-focused therapy demonstrated positive outcomes for a variety of presenting problems, it may be less effective in addressing severe psychiatric conditions such as personality disorder or, as I mentioned before, severe trauma. So clients with complex psychopathology often require a more comprehensive therapeutic approach that can be addressed their underlying issues and the reasons behind the problems that they are experiencing. Another limitation of solution-focused brief therapy is sometimes overemphasized on positivity and solutions. So solution-focused therapy places a strong emphasis on positivity and solutions, which can sometimes overlook or minimize the negative emotions or experiences, because in this approach, we usually focus on strengths of the clients, and sometimes it can look like we are not caring enough about their negative emotions that they're experiencing. So regarding this, Williams and his colleagues did another study, very recent, on 2023, and they explored this limitation specifically in emphasizing the needs to balance positivity and authenticity in therapy. So they argue that excessive focus on solutions may neglect the exploration of clients' authentic emotions, potentially like hindering the therapeutic process. And they mentioned that acknowledging and addressing negative emotions, pain and distress are essential for holistic healing. So it's actually very important for us mental health professionals to find the balance between like focusing on our clients' strengths and the negative emotions and experiences they are having. So therapists practicing solution-focused therapy should be, like, as I said, mindful of the importance of creating safe space for clients to explore their full range of emotions. So it's very important to provide an environment to them where they can equally share whatever they're experiencing. And another limitation, and which is the last limitation that I want to mention, is using solution-focused therapy with a certain client population. So sometimes solution-focused therapy cannot be very helpful with specific client population. So I would like to again mention about a study that's conducted on exploring clients with intellectual disabilities. We have mentioned that it can be difficult with a complex psychopathology, but it can also be sometimes difficult to use with people who are experiencing like learning disabilities. So the findings by the researchers say that like revealed social solution-focused therapy may present challenges in working with the population who are experiencing intellectual disabilities due to their unique cognitive and communication needs. Individuals with intellectual disabilities may sometimes struggle with abstract thinking and articulating their goals and solutions. Since it's very important in this therapy approach to leave the floor to our clients to explore their strengths and what is working for them, other than we suggesting them what can be beneficial for them. So with this specific population, it's very difficult for them to articulate their needs and actually, provide their narratives, right? So that's why this specific therapy approach sometimes can be very hard to work with. So this study specifically that I mentioned emphasized the need for adaptations and modifications to make with solution-focused therapy more suitable for individuals with intellectual disabilities, such as like incorporating visual aids and sometimes utilizing simplified language, like making the questions that we ask more simple and to make them understand and create their own narratives. So while solution-focused therapy offers valuable insights and benefits, it's always important to recognize its limitations. The lack of attention to underlying issues, limited effectiveness with complex psychopathology, and overemphasizing on positivity, and limited use with certain client populations are crucial areas to consider. Therapists, we mental health workers always should be aware of these limitations while working with our clients and adapt our approach as much as possible according to their needs. And continuing research and exploration in this field will be always like encouraged and then needed to learn more about and how we can adapt and work with our clients more effectively. Yeah, that's all I will share regarding the limitations. So thank you for listening.
Jazakallah khairan. Jazakallah khairan, Ustada Nazila and Sister Sabdanur, for your amazing presentation. Jazakallah khairan for all of you. Yes, Professor Nazila, you're supposed to go soon, right? If I'm not mistaken. So we won't be able to have a lot of Q&As, unfortunately, with Ustada Nazila, but perhaps Sister Sabdanur, if you would like to stay with us for a bit, and perhaps you can also answer some questions, inshallah. First and foremost, brothers and sisters, feel free to give a round of applause to Professor Nazila and Sister Sabdanur for an amazing presentation. We have truly been honored to be with all of you, mashallah. Jazakallah khairan for shedding so much light in this important topic and theme, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of you tawfiq, Professor Nazila and Sister Sabdanur, for your amazing research and contributions to the field of Islamic psychology. So let's go through the questions briefly. So it's very difficult. We only have one question. So perhaps I will allow Sister Fatima to ask a question summarizing some of the inputs from our participants to Professor Nazila.
Sure. Okay. One of the questions I think was asked earlier by Sister Zahra, and I think hopefully was kind of actually mentioned by Sister Sabdanur. So it was the understanding, she said, I understand the need and utility of solution-focused brief therapy. However, we know that pathology or symptoms are simply a result of a much deeper rooted core issues and emotional needs. And so without targeting those issues, is it not possible that the symptoms will simply reoccur? And I think Sister Sabdanur kind of was mentioning that this appears to be one of the limitations of solution brief therapy. So I think hopefully, Sister Zahra, that was kind of answered. Maybe we will bring in this last question that was by Sister Zainab. When we focus on how or where the client is stuck, how do we avoid it from going into a deeper spiral of the problem focus rather than solution focus? And also to then just bring in the area of tawakkul. Doesn't constructivism focus one-sidedly on action and overlook tawakkul? So this is a this is a great kind of question, bringing in that Islamic aspect of a solution-focused brief therapy. Like where is the perhaps aspect of tawakkul, and is it more focused on action?
That's a really great question, in the sense that we work with hundreds of clients, and we constantly see that some of them, they are not stuck, but most of them, they feel stuck. That's why they are in the therapy session, right? So most important thing is that the strength of the therapist is not to give up. If we give up, the client sees that. If you give up, that means that probably you are the only source in their lives that supports them, not being non-judgmental by listening to them and validating their feelings. So but the number one rule is that don't give up. That's the first thing. And the second rule is that we don't expect miracles to happen in session. Also, SFPT says that one session would be enough. And sometimes Milton Erickson also believes that one session would be enough. And I'll tell you one narrative from Milton Erickson. So his friend approached Milton Erickson saying that there's a husband and wife, they constantly fight. They married, and during their marriage life for 30 years, more than 30 years, they always fight. There's no single days that they don't fight. And asked Milton Erickson to see the husband and wife together. And then the couple came to see Erickson, and the Erickson asked one question. We know that Erickson was a specialist in hypnosis, right? So, and says that you had enough to fight in 30 years, now go and enjoy your life. And the couple left, and the friend said that they didn't fight anymore. You know, the single suggestion that Milton Erickson gave, go and now enjoy your life, was a kind of a beautiful hypnosis that Milton Erickson suggested. So sometimes we see these miracles can happen, but sometimes clients, they are stuck. So number one rule is that we should not give up. And let's remember that solution-focused brief therapy is not the only way to treat a problem in the client's life. There are hundreds of approaches that you can benefit. But what we like in solution-focused brief therapy is that if you see one thing that worked in the client's life, use it again and use it persistently. We know from Al-Ghazali saying that if you want to make an action and habit, you need to practice it 40 days. So to helping this client to practice in order to reinforce the action is really very helpful. That would be my suggestion. But sometimes, yes, we know it might take years to treat the problem. And that depends on not only the client, but also surrounding environment too, right? So remember what solution-focused brief therapy suggests, saying that change happens outside of the therapy as well. And how the outside world sustains the client's goals is also really very important in that respect. I am a registered social worker as well. So I believe in environmental kind of justice or kind of resources in the community. If you can create resources in the client's lives that supports them in the goal, that will be amazing. Or if you can refer the clients to work with other sources, will be good. Social workers, for example, can help them to find community resources, financial resources in order to help the client. So there are so many ways. And there is one question in the chat regarding AA groups. We know that AA groups are great. Many people, they report, but there are also research studies saying that it doesn't work too. So when we look at the rate of success using AA group or attending AA group, we see that sometimes it's low too. We have low rate. And one of the reasons is that kind of the sense of helplessness in the group, even in the session. This is one of the biggest factors, or hopelessness too. So how we can use Islamic approach to create hope in the person, kind of constantly giving the message that Allah is all merciful, Allah is all compassionate. Tawbah is really very important. If you violate your Tawbah, but Allah's doors for the Tawbah is always open. Right? Never give up, because Allah never gives up. You don't give up. And how we constantly give these messages to the client. One of the things is that we need to remember that information giving, advice is giving is different from therapy, right? So therapy is a gentle approach that we use, and asking useful questions and meaningful questions are really very important. When we give advice to someone else, we don't ask a question. We just give information. We just advise them, right? So therapy in that regard is different. So how we ask meaningful questions in order to facilitate the change, how we can use our tradition to facilitate change. Again, in that respect, therapy is very creative. Sometimes we can be eclectic, using different approaches as well in the therapy in order to help the client. So briefly, I'm stopping here because in one session, we believe that we cannot answer all the calls, but I would like to invite you to engage in tafakkur.
I also would like to touch upon, I want to add one more thing. As Dr. Isgandarova mentioned, also I want to share that hope, patience, and expectations are the common values of Islamic culture and solution-focused therapy. That's why actually this approach specifically works with this culture. And today, this morning, when I was preparing for this presentation, I just came across with a study by Jakob Ime, that's done on 2019, and the article name is Solution Focused Therapy and Spirituality. So if you can go that study, and he clearly explained that, and I just want to share a very, very short part of it. It says, in Islam, differently from some religions, patience is not only a value that's useful in interpersonal relationships to deal with anger that teaches individuals the merit of anticipation, but it's actually a deeper meaning to Sufism. And then in Islamic culture, it says, as with all other religions, Allah is very patient, and then the hope and patience is the characteristic of all prophets. So in Islam, patience is not a passive obedience in the face of troubles and difficulties. It rather refers to making efforts with a positive and hopeful attitudes, keeping in mind that seemingly pleasant situation may have an unpleasant side. So while seemingly unpleasant situation may have a silver lining, and only Allah can know what there is behind the scenes. So it's always important for us to focus on future and what we can do, just staying and questioning ourselves. Yeah.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much, Sister Sabdanur and Professor Nazila, for these great reflections and inputs. We really appreciate it. So Professor Nazila, you could leave now if you want. I mean, if you're busy, we totally understand. We want to thank you for really allowing us to take part of your precious time today, that you gave some of your precious time today. And then we hope that we can collaborate with you in the near future, Professor Nazila. The ISIP is at your service, and we're also establishing a research center. We have a lot of things to do, and we would love you to be part of advisory board. So Sister Fatima will speak more with you, and I will be honored to have a meeting with you as well, Professor. Thank you so much for being with us, and we're looking forward to work with you in different capacities, and also with more lectures and workshops in the future. So I wish you a great day. Thank you for honoring us with your presence.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, Professor. Feel free to to also be with us for a couple of minutes more, Sister Sabdanur, if you want, and I will try my best to ask those questions to you. It's not a lot of questions. We will not take too much out of your time. Sister Marietti has asked, how do we use SFBT to conceptualize his problem from the spiritual dimension?
Okay, yeah, it's a great question too. So from my own perspective, what I think is conceptualizing the problem, you said, right?
Yeah, exactly.
from a spiritual perspective. Okay, so first of all, it's really important to understand like where, like how the client is seeing the problem, whether he or she is thinking it's like the cause as themselves, or the cause sometimes like comes from what they believe or what they do, like what they show as a behavior. So it's very, first of all, important to understand or make them understand what they think is the cause of the problem. It's not like focusing on the problem, but to understand where the problem is coming from. So once we understand the main cause of the problem, right? So we can know how we can approach that problem using specifically like Islamic perspective on it. So yeah.
And I guess
If I may just add, thank you, Sister Sabda. Yeah, and so exactly as Sister Nazila was saying, that the meaning-making aspect of all religions, but of course in ours is providing that framework, right? And that is the entry point of when we're doing psychotherapy to a great entry point to have the divine. How does that exactly how was being shared today in today's session? Like, what are the openings and how are you understanding what you're going through? So there's a lot of opportunities to infuse the spirituality there in terms of our helping to the person conceptualize their problem. Is this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to a'udhu billah, hurt us? Is that how we conceive of Allah? And so again, attaching to those names of Allah, that Allah is Kareem, and so this is not something that's coming to me in order to destroy me, or that that the Quran mentions that He will not give us burdens that are greater than we can bear. So bringing in those aspects to help that person, inshallah, help conceptualize their problem there's a great opportunity in solution focused, but also through lots of the other modalities as well.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Sister Fatima, for your excellent inputs. I think that solution-based, solution-focused is a very important modality, of course. But as also Professor Nazila said, we can work eclectic. And that's the thing. We try to advocate in ISIP the eclectic approach rooted in Quran and Sunnah. Because this is the beauty of our tradition, Islamic psychology. It's very multiplex. There's not one way. And there is only one way in the sense that it leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the one way, and it's also rooted in Quran and Sunnah. That's the foundation. Then if you look at the traditional scholars, they approach the science of the soul very much differently. And that's beautiful. So solution-based is one. And as also Sister Fatima alluded to, it's about how to cope with things.
Right.
How do you utilize your spirituality and your religious perspective to cope with things? And also to be mindful that we shouldn't spiritually bypass our clients if we're clinicians. It's very easy that we tend to sometimes subconsciously spiritually bypass ourselves. And in that sense, we could potentially do it with others. Now, spiritual bypassing is quite a difficult wording as well. Sister Sabdanur, I see that you need to leave now. I'm so sorry, yes. Sister Sabdanur. I thought that you were able to be with us. Jazakallah khairan. For your words. We'll answer the rest of the questions. I think that
I'm very sorry. Yeah, as I said, I'm student as well, which I have class at 11:15.
No problem.
So yeah, thank you so much. It was an honor to be with you, all of you here. So yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your lecture. So yeah, thank you so much for having me today.
Please, your students, so join us. We're also all students, so you should join us. Fatima will reach out to you because she lives in Canada, in Toronto, inshallah. Also, Sister Aya is from Toronto. So thank you so much, Sister Sabdanur. May Allah grant you tawfiq.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So essentially, just to go back to what Sister Fatima also alluded to, is to essentially to find a way of bringing acceptance of your situation without bypassing the fact that we can all be in struggles sometimes. And it's part of human nature to be in struggles because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He will test us. And to be in that moment in the state of acceptance is not easy. And that's where we as, counselors or therapists come in, to help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the healer, and we will help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help the client to perhaps find a way of accepting. But that's easier said than done. So we need to be very mindful of that, and that the solution is nothing that we just force our clients into. Rather, the unveiling comes step by step. And we never know when the person fully feels whole again. So this is something we need to be mindful, because sometimes we tend to take different modalities and think this is the solution. We need to do it like this, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in reality, it's not like that. Not always, at least. Sometimes it could. So we need to use the modalities, whether it's solution-based, solution-focus-based, or other modalities, as theories that could be useful in our toolbox. But then you can, work eclectically, as Professor Nazila said, in order to find the right domain that is congruent with yourself as a therapist, but also for the client, because different clients have different disposition. And some people are very, easily accepting, hardship, and their problem will be probably how to accept happiness. So that's a different thing. Some people might struggle with, let's say, addiction, like in some of the case studies, but then they're so good in being kind and being gentle, which is also to embody the prophetic ways, So there is always a fine attunement that we need to, tailor for each and every client, because no client is universally filled with shortcomings, and no client is universally filled with strength. And this is the balance that we need to be mindful of, because our clients is a mirror of ourselves. This is also very important, brothers and sisters. The clients are a mirror of ourselves. We're not better than our clients. We're never better than our clients. We're all connected through struggles, and maybe their struggles might be different than yours, but we're a mirror of them in the sense that we also have struggles in ourselves. And that's why I think the solution comes also from having that awareness and being yourself in constant, spiritual wayfitting and working with yourself, and, going to therapy and doing your own supervision as well. Allahu Akbar. We have 2, 3 more questions. Yes, Sister Fatima, would you like to say something?
Yeah, go ahead. No, Sister Kauthar had her hand up.
Okay, Sister Kauthar, please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Catching on what you have been just explaining, our great Al-Ghazali, and no wonder we always go round and around and go back to Sheikh Al-Ghazali. He speaks of the cleansing of the heart, of the purification of the heart. And if you see the therapist, if we see ourselves as therapists or as people who are put in situations to help others and focus on purifying our own hearts in such a way that they can reflect to those people who are in need their own struggles, but as you said it, and Sayyidah Fatima said it several times before, in an empathic way, that reflection of their struggles comes to them as if reading into their troubles without the shame and blame, and without the self feeling of lack of worth. So this reflection comes back as, I can see that I am having troubles and I deserve to get help, and this person in front of me is willing to help me. So it eases the interaction and the report that is being stressed over and over. Barakallahu fiik.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Kauthar. Thank you for input. We really appreciate it. Yes, Sister Fatima, you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I put it into the chat, that next week's session is really on this, on how to conceptualize problems. And so we invite everybody here to join us, inshallah, next Saturday with Brother Faisal Malik, also from Canada, who will be speaking on trials and tribulations from an Islamic perspective. And the registration is open there, and it's in the chat. So you can click on that and register. And of course, we'll be sending out another notice about that. But yeah, this is like the heart of it, getting to, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and centering that, of course, in our healing process as well.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Fatima, for reminding us of the lecture next month, Saturday. So next Saturday, as Sister Fatima alluded to, we will have Brother Faisal Malik from Canada, He has written a book about how to view trials and tribulation from Islamic perspective as well. I recommend you guys to buy the book if you have the opportunity to support our beloved brother. Also, actually, Sister Fatima and myself are writing a book, writing an article that will be published, inshallah, soon about how to deal with trials and tribulations from Islamic point of view. So together with one of our teachers, Dr. Yusuf, we have written that article. So inshallah, we will share it in all of our groups as well. Thank you, Sister Kauthar, for your inputs. So brothers and sisters, we usually don't open up the microphone for questions because we're so many people and our scholars tend to have a lot. But now the whole formal lecture is over because nobody of the presenters are not here anymore. So